evening, everybody. This is fantastic. It's great to see you all here to celebrate the work that's been done by our young scholars at our Summer Institute this year. We've had 2 tiers of scholars this year. A group that was in the program last summer when we initiated it, and a group that is participating in the program for the first time this year. The second year scholars are responsible for the outstanding posters that you've seen out in the foyer, and the first year students are going to do presentations of their work a bit later in this program this evening. So you have an opportunity to hear what they accomplished during the course of the summer. I'd like to thank the John Hope Franklin Center for providing us with a wonderful space to use this summer, and in particular Melissa Neely in operations support and Chris Gear in ITT systems support for all the work that they've done. But I also want to give a very special thanks to the instructors for the program this summer. They've been great. So let me start with Mr. Patrick Dahl, who is at Carrington Middle School, and this is his second year working with the program. We hope and Ms. Tiara Russell with Carrington Middle School. And then working with our second year students are Mr. Raymond Beeman, who has been at Hillside High School. I understand that he's moving to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg system, but we're trying to persuade him to come back and work in the program again next summer. So he'll have to commute from Charlotte, but we'll see if we can work that out. And also Ms. Brittany Del Rosario from Southern High School. This is a project that is fully collaborative with the Durham Public School System, so that the overwhelming number of our students who participate in the program attend Durham Public Schools. And our liaison with the Durham Public Schools is Dr. Kelvin Bullock. He is the K through 12 social studies specialist. And I'll have to say, Dr. Bullock is the person who identified the instructors for the program, so that tells you a great deal about his judgment and wisdom, because our instructors have been fantastic. Okay. We also have relied on the Durham Public Schools for transportation services, and I'd like to thank Viola Woody and Leondis McDonald in particular for their help in arranging transportation for the students throughout the course of the summer. Now, there's a number of people I have to thank, from our own Samuel DuBois Cook Center on Social Equity, which is the origin point for this summer program. And I must thank them, because without their work, effort, and creativity, this program would not have existed or been as effective as it has proven to be. So first I want to thank Gwen Wright, our Director of Strategic Initiatives and Collaboration. Joanne O'Neill, who is our financial analyst. And who has a relative who has participated in the program. Addison Malone, the program coordinator. Crystalline Cooksey, our undergraduate research assistant. Now, I'm not sure that she's here this evening. Lauren Russell, who has been a research assistant with the program. I believe she's already gone off to Harvard to start her PhD program in public policy, but she worked with the program at the beginning of the summer. Salima El Amin, the Senior Research Associate and the Program Coordinator for the Global Inequality Research Initiative. Kai Zhao, who works very closely with me on a number of research projects concerning various dimensions of wealth inequality. She is the Statistical Research Associate, and I think Kai is sitting somewhere toward the rear. Now, there's several people who did presentations to the students during the course of the summer, and these presentations were on a variety of topics, ranging from issues surrounding health inequity to political inequities, educational inequities, and the like, and I'd like to name them as well. So the first person I'd like to mention is Keisha Bentley Edwards, who is an assistant professor of medicine, newly anointed assistant professor of medicine here at Duke, and a senior researcher. I'd also like to recognize Rhonda Bullock, co-director of the project We Are. And We Are is an acronym for Working to Extend Anti-Racist Education. Kia Caldwell from the Diaspora Studies Department at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Malik Edwards from North Carolina Central University's Law School. Bruce Orenstein, our artist in residence at the Cook Center, who is a documentary filmmaker and who supervised the process of the film that was made during the course of this summer session. And last but definitely not least, Atreus Good, who I've known for many years, who is president and CEO of Movement of Youth, and he spoke to the students during the course of the summer also. Now, invariably, I miss somebody, and I hope that I didn't this evening. So if I did, please forgive me, and find some other way to make it up to you. Okay. So I'd like to next introduce our speaker this evening, who is Dr. Bert L'Homme, who is the Superintendent of Schools in Durham. He has an extraordinarily generous spirit. When we first met him at his office to discuss further developments of the Summer Institute, he was warmly and enthusiastically encouraging, and he said to Dr. Bullock, "You've got my blessing, let's make this happen." We also discovered that he has a close connection to Addison Malone's family, but that's another story. Dr. L'Homme was in the DPS system earlier, so he actually returned to become superintendent in 2014. He has an extensive background in education and child advocacy. He has a PhD in special education and school administration from the University of Maryland at College Park. He began his career in education in the Washington, D.C. school system as a special education teacher. Then he moved to North Carolina. And after 6 years as assistant superintendent for academic services at the Durham Public Schools, he served as the superintendent of Franklin County school system between 2004 and 2009. In 2009, I thought that this was a particularly interesting project that he had undertaken. He coordinated an initiative at the Children's Defense Fund in the District of Columbia to break the cradle to school to prison pipeline. And that's a subject that is at the heart of a lot of the projects that a number of the students worked on this summer. In July 2010, he became superintendent for the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. schools, 96 parochial schools serving approximately 27,000 students. But as of 2014, he has become our superintendent of schools, and I'm thrilled that he is going to provide us with some comments this evening. Thank you very much.
One of the honors of my life have been, when I did go back to the Children's Defense Fund after being gone for so many years, is to work with Mary Wright Edelman. And I always never give up an opportunity to talk about her because she was in Mississippi during that Freedom Summer. She was the first African-American woman to be admitted to the bar in Mississippi. She came to Washington after that, at the time of Resurrection City, People's Campaign, and she founded the Children's Defense Fund, and she has been the single strongest, most perfect advocate for children of all races and ethnicities in the United States. And if you heard if you listened a little bit to the second convention, you would hear several talking about Mrs. Edelman. Is that at one time, when I was principal of City Light School in Washington, D.C., Mrs. Clinton was chair of the board of the Children's Defense Fund. So they go back a long time and share similar values. That was not what I was going to talk about. The second thing I was going to talk about, the second thing I was not going to talk about is that I'm looking out at all of you and I see our most wonderful students, and they are so bright and so smart and they're so dedicated to their scholarship, but I see parents and families sitting around them. And boys and girls, I know that you think you're young men and young women, but boys and girls, you don't see what I see. I see parents who are so proud of you, that you are exhibiting your scholarship. And I'm proud of you. And your teachers are proud of you. But I want to start off by saying that I appreciate the many partnerships between Duke University and Durham Public Schools, but tonight especially, the Samuel DuBois Cook Center on Social Equity and the Young Scholars Research Institute. Social equity is an issue that our students, teachers, and administrators confront on a daily basis. We seek to answer questions like, how do we make our schools more fair? How do we enable every child to reach his or her potential? How do we overcome not only the legacies of discrimination and prejudice, but how do we overcome the current realities of discrimination and prejudice? Last May and June, I went to 11 graduations, shook over 2,000 hands. And again, you can't imagine, that is my proudest time of the year, is when I see the young men and young women walk across that stage and are launched into adulthood with that high school diploma. But there was a theme in almost every single speech that was given during those 11 graduations. And it seemed that all the speakers spoke on issues of equity for our students in our community. The rights of immigrants, the achievement gap, implications of House Bill 2, voter registration, equal access, equal pay, living wage. And during that time, it reminded me that Durham is a very special place. And many of you know who study these things, we are a blue dot on a red map. We know how to fight, and we know how to argue, and we know how to debate. And at times our local politics can even be brutal. But I believe that we all have the same goals, and what we argue about and fight about is how to achieve those goals. The process is messy. But I believe in Durham, we always end up at the right place. This summer, at this institute, our scholars were able to do something that is more valuable than gold. And that is the unrestricted and free inquiry into difficult subjects with a clear emphasis on scholarship. You were able to know things about difficult subjects from different vantage points. Those of you, you can tell I'm not from the South, but I'm going to quote an old Southern saying, we all see the parade from where we stand. And it's by considering every angle that we reach the truth. And that's what you were doing this summer. You were seeking truth. At this institute, it's not inquiry for the sake of inquiry, but inquiry that leads to understanding, inquiry and understanding that leads to action, and action that leads to change. And that's young scholars, which you're tasked with. You know something you probably have always known. If you are going to make a difference, the first step is to understand and to appreciate our history and our recent history. What happened 100 years ago is as important as what happened yesterday. And there's something else. As a lifelong student of history, I know that what we study in depth, we experience vicariously. You may not have been at the sit-in at the Royal Creamery on Roxborough Street in Durham, but you can experience what those students experience by your careful investigation and study. I am delighted that the Samuel DuBois Cook Center on Social Equity is committed to working with you, our students, as you examine and confront these issues of inequity. And as I said at the beginning, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of our teachers. Because, after all, it's about academic excellence. It's about service. And it's about building a more just society. I want to thank not only the Samuel DuBois Center and our teachers, but I want to thank Dr. Kelvin Bullock, who is a leader in DPS, not just in our social studies department, though that's more than a full-time job, but he is also about making our schools and our school system more equitable and inclusive. So young men and young women, young scholars, congratulations again. And thank you for having me this evening.
The first year we did racial inequalities, so we talked about the different wealth inequalities, educational inequalities, pay gaps and things like that. And we also talked about the new Jim Crow laws.
This year my group is developing graduate posters. Each poster is about an individual topic in which we ask a research question, then we follow up on the question. A lot of us have made our own graphs, we've made our own visuals, and people are doing some really cool stuff.
During that process, they're also going to start to develop research on something that particularly interests them or something they may want to solve. And so we really get to be hands-off and let the student explore what is their inner desires and what they would like to solve in the world.
My research question is, will the middle class cease to exist inside of the next coming decades?
How poverty affects the ability to learn in North Carolina.
Throughout this process, students are also developing their research skills, they're developing their writing skills, their presentation skills.
While on the other hand, lighter-skinned girls are the ones who are more memorable.
They're most likely not doing that type of research in high school or don't have the materials to do so. So the fact that they get the opportunity now at 14, 15, 16 years old is really quite wonderful.
Presentation comes off and how well. The goal of this program is that students will have opportunities to analyze different issues of equity in society and think about ways that they could remedy or reduce inequalities in society.
You should be exposed to these sorts of things at a young age because that'll develop your character later on in life. It'll make you, I think, a better person.
After I got out of the program last year, it really opened my eyes up to see what's going on in the world today and how it related to what I learned in the program.
No matter what you do, social justice needs to be implemented in your career.
Keep walking.
You heard, kind of racist things, but you wouldn't really address it.
Try to not think about it. But now my attitude is more like, you need to think about it because that's the only way anything happens.
After this program, I plan on doing as much as I can, to make everyone else aware around me. And hopefully they'll spread the word and they'll, spread the word to everyone else.
I really like this institute, and I think that there should be more of them because social awareness is the key to social change.
Equity and Immigration and Religion by Leah Zachary, Jason Beltran, and Alexis Green.
So first the question. By a show of hands, how many of you have been discriminated because of your religion, race, gender, or anything else that could separate you?
This discrimination prevents you from opportunities both socially and economically.
Such as jobs along with housing and education. Hi, my name is Leah Zachary. I'm here today to talk to you about how religion affects immigration and discrimination. I'm guessing many of you have heard of ISIS. They claim that they represent many Muslims throughout the world. This claim itself has no legitimacy whatsoever. The fear of radical Islam could be compared to a New Age McCarthyism Islam, thinking there's a large problem even though the problem itself is quite trivial or small. By creating a hostile environment, by proposing legislation to ban all Muslim immigrants coming into America, makes many Muslim Americans feel betrayed by their government. The graph here shows the flight complaints. As you can see, religion itself is quite high. My hypothesis is that this is based off of the random TSA screening rates that could have something to do with, again, the fear of radical Islam.
Religion is not the only inequality facing us today. Another is Latino immigration. The DREAM Act allows for undocumented immigrants to gain residency. The House of Representatives didn't allow for the DREAM Act to be passed because the votes were too short. It failed on 52 through 44 vote in 2007, 8 votes short. The DACA policy allows for undocumented to gain a 2-year work permit and free from deportation. The House of Representatives didn't pass the DREAM Act because that would give undocumented immigrants too many rights. Instead, they allowed for the DACA policy, so they would instead of joining the society as a citizen. A politician once said, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best, they're sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're bringing rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. A research done by Procon in 2004 shows that there were 9.30 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. Also, another research done by the United States in Government Accountability Office shows that there were 48,708 criminal aliens compared to how many aliens there were in the United States at the time. This shows that not all undocumented immigrants come here for mass purposes. Origins of 11 through 12 million undocumented immigrants in the United States in 2009. As you can tell, Mexico comes for 59%, and Central America. Most of the undocumented immigrants come from Mexico who are searching for a new life. comes at 59%. Then Asia and Central America come for 11%, and so forth. Who are eligible to become a United States citizen of 2000 to 2011. As you can tell, Mexican-born is 30% less than all Mexican immigrants. This shows that non-Mexican-born are twice as likely to become a citizen than Mexican-born immigrants.
Hi, I'm Alexis. I attend DSA, and I'll be talking about the Syrian refugee crisis. Since the Syrian civil war began in March 2011, 380,000 have been killed, including 14,000 children, and 4.8 million have become refugees. The refugees aim to go to Europe, North America, or remain in the Middle East. The top image shows where they go in Europe and Middle East. Turkey has the most with over 2 million, Lebanon close behind with 1 million, and Jordan with 600,000. The bottom image shows where they go in America. Texas, California, and Arizona are among the states withholding over 100 immigrants. This relates to equity because these people are negatively stereotyped, such as terrorists, radicals, or as Leah mentioned, radical Islams, imposing fear, hatred, and disapproval. In this political cartoon, there are two boats, labeled Syria and World Response. The Syrian boat is on fire with people jumping off of it, while the World Response boat is pushing people off the boat with refugees. However, World Response more so depicts America because we've been refusing so many refugees.
Today, all of our topics tie in is based on immigration and discrimination faced against immigrants coming into America based on race or religion.
Colorism by Jessica Uba, Toby Adio, Akanke Mason, and Giovanni Parker. We're going to show how colorism affects political movements, physical features, media, and incarceration. So firstly, what is colorism? Colorism is the practice of those with lighter skin being treated more fairly than those with darker skin. During slavery, there was a notion of white supremacy where whites were seen as more successful, more beautiful, and had better opportunities. So after slavery, ex-slaves thought that if they could achieve more Eurocentric features, such as straighter hair, smaller lips, or a thinner nose, they would also have those opportunities. Contrary to popular belief, Claudette Colvin, pictured on the right, was actually the first to refuse to move seats on the bus and get arrested for it. However, an NAACP leader named Nixon believed that she would be too militant and chose Rosa Parks for the face instead. Even though she was pregnant, she believed that if she had lighter skin and lived in a better area, the circumstances would have been different.
Another way colorism manifests itself in our society is through the way that beauty products are projected to Black women, more specifically hair products. So a little bit of background on Black hair. Because of racial mixing during and after slavery, there is a spectrum of different hair types that Black women have. According to Black Women Beauty Central, most Black women fall between the 4B and 4C hair type ranges right here. However, knowing that there is a spectrum, most product companies cater to looser curl patterns and those with looser hair. Because the spectrum is due to racial mixing, those with lighter skin typically have looser curl patterns than those with darker skin. So this relates to colorism because those with lighter skin are celebrated more in the media. So in these ads, you can see that here are some examples where products were designed for women with looser or with tighter hair textures like 4B, 4C. However, in the ads, they decided to use white women, biracial women, and also a woman with a looser hair texture to market these products, even though that's not representative of the natural hair community.
So colorism in the media. So with different complexions come different stereotypes. Darker skinned women are often seen as more angry, loud, aggressive, or the mammies or committed sidekicks to the lighter skinned girls. While on the other hand, lighter skinned girls are the ones with a man, with a career, more desirables, and the one most worthy of attention. So some examples. In the movie Precious, all the people who were mistreating her and abusing her were darker skinned, like her mom or her dad who impregnated her 2 times. And all the people who were there to help her and were so nice to her were lighter skinned, like her teacher and her counselor. Another example is Proud Family. So Penny is the cute little light-skinned girl that everybody loves. She's friendly, nice, and she's able to get a man. On the other hand, Dijon, Dijon Mustard, is a little bit more aggressive, loud, and too ugly to have a man. Last but not least, is in the show market. So Gina is the one who's lighter skinned, with a man, with a career, and she's also more friendly. While on the other hand, Pam is the one that's manless, jobless, and she's more aggressive. And same for Shanae, who's also darker skinned and is also more aggressive, loud, and lonely. So how does this impact us? The way this impacts us is that as younger people see these kind of stereotypes on the TV, they start to feel like they have to live up to these stereotypes, which will just increase the colorism movement.
So not only does colorism impact media, protests, and appearance, it also impacts incarceration rates because of the shade one falls in as an African American. If you're a dark-skinned African American, most likely you'll serve a longer sentence than a light-skinned African American by 11% according to Villanova statistics. According to the same study conducted in North Carolina, it showed that light-skinned women spent 12% less time behind bars than dark-skinned women. This is a quote from Villanova University, basically saying that your skin tone determines how long your jail sentence will be, along with the time served. This graph describes how people get longer or shorter sentences on the same crime based on skin color. On the left-hand side is the sentence length in days, ranging from 2,100 days to 2,850 days. As you can see, whites and blacks have unequal sentencing, from medium and dark blacks having the most amount of days to whites and light-skinned blacks being almost indistinguishable. Colorism has an impact on historical movements, American media, product marketing, and incarceration rates. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Jenny Luba. And my name is Sandra Santillion, Socioeconom with Association. And today we're going to be presenting about gender inequality and the origins and pay gap. The origins of gender inequality. Today, gender inequality is seen as a major problem worldwide. In order to resolve a problem of such magnitude, it is essential to travel to the root of the problem. Around 10,000 BCE, hunter-gatherers began a transition into agriculture and set tasks for all individuals, marking the beginning of the Neolithic Revolution. Views on women started changing over time. For example, in China, it was thought females were yin and males were yang, thought to explain why males dominated women. Many of the philosophies of our ancient ancestors have remained embedded within society until today. More specifically, views on women.
The pay gap. Gender inequality is unequal treatment of individuals based on gender. An example of gender inequality is the pay gap between men and women. Women face the pay gap in nearly every occupation. Women earn 77 cents to each dollar that men earn in 2012. The median earnings of women are typically $37,791 and men $49,398. The Equal Pay Act, signed by John F. Kennedy, made it illegal for women to be paid at lower rates for the same job, strictly on the basis of their sex. More education helps increase women's earnings, but it still doesn't close the gender pay gap. Because of the pay gap, women struggle to pay off debt, such as student loans, more than men do. Some high school jobs, such as doctors, for example, have the worst pay gaps in history.
Present-day gender inequality and pay gap. Since the Declaration of Independence in 1776, it clearly stated that all men are created equal, but what about the women of America? In the United States, women are paid only 79% of what their male counterparts make. For example, female doctors make 71% of what males make, female lawyers and judges make 82% of what men make, and female financial specialists make 66% of what their male counterparts make.
The pink tax is a gender-based pricing that has been a phenomenon since 1995. The California study shows that women on average pay $1,351 more per year on products more than men. Some examples are moisturizers, shaving creams, and other hygienic products. Before Obama's Affordable Care Act, women paid more for health insurance because they were expected to live longer. In this scenario, both the men and the woman bought a white-colored male shirt. They both spilled red wine on the shirt and took it to the cleaners. The man paid $5.75 and the woman paid $6. The lady said that the lady was charged more because they said her shirt was a lady's shirt, which in reality it was the same exact shirt.
Connections. Since women still don't make as much as men do overall, says Catherine Orr, professor and chairman of Identity Studies at Beloit College, it seems a little bit more unfair that we're paying more for things like toiletries, car repairs, or things like that. Women are paid 21% less than men for the same job, but they are also paying 13% more for personal care products, 8% more for adult clothing, 7% more for toys and accessories, and 4% more for children's clothing. Women pay more for products with the exact same ingredients as men do, but they're still being paid less. Drawing connections. In a number of ancient societies, including ancient Greece and China, women were not allowed to carry out legal issues without the presence of a man. Today, women in most countries are free to exercise their will under the eyes of the law. In order to overcome the problems that come with women in the workplace, differences in wages were created to compensate. These problems include pregnancy leave, child care, perceived female concerns mostly relating to family issues. The evolution of the human conscious is dependent on our ability to improve and mend our mistakes. Thank you for joining us and have a nice evening.
Hello, my name is Leary Ann. Sierra and Rita cannot be here with us this evening though. This is Sabat and this is Maya, and we talked about racial and legal inequality. Race used in education. Black students as young as the age of 4 are expelled 3 times more than white students. American Indians represented 1% of school populations but have a 3% suspension rate. Latino students are 2 times more likely to be expelled from school compared to white students. 30% of African American youth under the age of 18 are put into juvenile justice systems, while they only make up 17% of the juvenile justice system. Latino children are 43% more likely to be put into adult jails than white students, and are 40% more likely to be put into adult prisons compared to white students. In this graph, it talks about juveniles and residential placement by race / Hispanic origin and gender for 2013. Here you can see non-Hispanic whites. These are the males, and green is for females. The non-Hispanic blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and American Indians. As you can see, non-Hispanic blacks are highest overall.
Hi, my name is Sabat. I'm going to talk about the rise of incarceration in America. So this graph. Sorry. This graph represents the increase of incarceration since 1980 due to the war. The President Nixon war on drugs. As you can see, African American were at the top, and they still are. White American they're at the bottom, and they're still at the bottom to this day. Unequal punishment for crime. African American are put in prison at a higher rate than that of white. In 1970, black males were 9% of the prison population. Today, there are 62% of the prison population. This is due to the field of use of drug and drug trade. 14 million white, 2.6 million black report on use of illicit drug in America. The ratio of 5-to-1 of white to black use of drug, but the ratio of 10-to-1 black to white as the use of drug. June 1971, President Nixon declared war on drug, targeting 4 urban neighborhoods. Why are African Americans being targeted? Law enforcement focus on urban area or low-income community and community of color, and inequitable treatment by the criminal justice system according to the drug policy. Thank you.
Racially biased police acts. Police are 50% more likely to use force on blacks and Latinos than whites. The Black Lives Matter movement was founded July 13, 2013, after Trayvon Martin's unlawful death. Blacks are shot 2.5 times the rate of whites. Less than 10% of all killed were unarmed. Stop and frisk is a strategy police officers use, which involves them stopping and questioning a pedestrian and then frisking them for weapons and contraband. People of color are more likely than whites to be searched, and blacks are more likely to be arrested. Because of this, it leads to a lot of African Americans being sent to court and therefore given racially biased sentences.
In 2005, the case Booker v. United States dealt with a man that was convicted of selling and using crack cocaine. Booker was originally sentenced 17 to 22 years in jail, but his sentence was later raised to 30 years to life. The judge found sufficient evidence to raise his sentence. According to the federal sentencing guidelines, judges are allowed to increase or decrease a sentence without a jury present. But according to the 6th Amendment, all defendants have a right to an impartial jury. Booker did not receive a jury. Because, as a result of this case, the federal sentencing guidelines were deemed as more advisory than mandatory, meaning that judges had increased discretion when it came to sentencing. Three issues that arose from this case were increased racial disparities in sentencing, increased judge-made sentences, and shorter sentences for certain types of offenses. As you can see, these are some modern-day examples, such as the death penalty in Alabama and the Brock Turner rape case where he only had 6 months in jail. Next is a case that displayed all 3 of these issues. In Florida in 2009, 4 young men ransacked a home. They were all sentenced with burglary and theft. 2 of the young men were Hispanic and the other 2 were Caucasian. The 2 Caucasian young men spent 1 night in jail and never released. The 2 Hispanic young men were both sent to jail as adults. 1 young man was sexually assaulted in prison and the other had a very high bail of $30,000.
In conclusion, my group came to the fact that African and Latino Americans started to become racially targeted back in the slavery times. This therefore led to them in modern day times going to school and being around drugs, weapons, and gangs, which would therefore lead them to the prison lifestyle, and which would make them have racially biased sentencing in courts. Thank you.
Good evening. All right, we're here to present the School to Prison Pipeline, and this was made by myself, Samuel,
and myself, David. Christian and Colin cannot be here today, and we all go to Hillside.
So what is the School to Prison Pipeline? The School to Prison Pipeline is the school system not caring for at-risk minorities by not addressing the students' needs, which leads them into going to jail. Because a lot of times where a student might come from might affect the way they learn in the classroom. And with you pushing them and they have to go home and worry about certain things that you don't have to, it can affect their grades.
What is the importance of a quality education? A quality education allows for productive citizens past school life, so it gives you a knowledge of the world that not many people have. You don't have a quality education. It allows for a change to occur in the world when you have knowledge. And these days, knowledge is power, and everybody wants power. In order to have power, you need to have a quality education. How does poverty play into the School to Prison Pipeline? 11.9% of low-income students are expelled or suspended from school compared to 6.1% of higher-income students. I think this occurs because lower-income students may not have the different resources that they need, such as money, clothes, and food. It's not good that some students have to worry about where the next meal is coming from, and that alone speaks volumes. And I think some change should happen about that.
In 2014, black juveniles were nearly twice as likely to live in poverty as white juveniles. And as you can see from the statistics here, from 1975 to 2014, the percentage of people under the age of 18 in poverty by race. And blacks have been in 30 to 40% range, the whites and Asians. What is the zero tolerance policy that I was talking about for the causes? The zero tolerance policy is a school policy that has predetermined consequences for offenses, regardless of the seriousness of the behavior. So a student can come in, get in a fight, and be automatically suspended without any reasoning of trying to help counsel them or fix them from doing it again, because we often see that students are suspended and expelled for the same things that they were coming to a new school, and it happens over and over again. Because of the policy, black students are 3.5 times more likely to get suspended than white students. 40% of students expelled each year are black students, and they only make up 16% of the whole student population. 70% of students involved in in-school arrests or referred to law enforcement are black and Latino. And also, a few years ago, in the Durham public school system, the administrative offices for education sued or filed a complaint against DPS for disproportionate rates in black suspensions.
the building of prisons. Sadly, in America, private and public institutions have started building up the amount of prisons that they think that they need based off of third grade reading test scores. In the third grade, American companies can tell whether a student will be likely to go to jail or not likely to go to jail. And I think after the third grade, teachers, in my opinion, set up roadblocks for students that are labeled at risk. And these roadblocks include like getting suspended for being late to class when everybody has been late to class before. Preventing the building of prisons. In my opinion, the way we can prevent the building of these prisons would be to better equip ourselves with the knowledge that we need, because the way that America has been since forever, the school system is not going to give us anything, and we have to go and take it ourselves, because that's what we deserve. We all deserve a quality education.
Now we're going to look at what is being done to help the issue. The National Education Association have introduced a way of handling situations in schools opposite of zero tolerance, and they're called restorative practices. And what it basically does is help students reflect and fix the situation without involving of security officers in schools, arresting them, or being detained for mild altercations. And in this diagram, we have just a short scenario of a student through zero tolerance and restorative practices. And it just goes through him being late to class, scolded by his teacher, fighting in the cafeteria, ending him in a juvenile detention with an arrest on his record, and suspensions afterwards, which lead him out of the classroom, losing education. Then through restorative practices, he's simply coming in late, scolded, well not really scolded, but his teacher waits after class to speak with him and help evaluate what's going on. And then after his altercation, they sit down together and de-escalate the situation. Then afterwards, they help out during a free period and go home. Simple as that.
These are our citations, and are there any questions?
Socioeconomic mobility. Socioeconomic mobility is the ability of a certain group of people to move up or down in the social or economic system based on their wealth or the amount of education they have. Who has the advantage or disadvantage and why? The main reason for this is because of unequal distribution of wealth, which can be noted way back from during slavery. Slavery was ended in 1866, but the Jim Crow laws came about in the 1880s, barely even 15 years after the end of slavery. The National Housing Act in 1933 and the Federal Housing Administration in 1934 were enacted to help Americans help Americans buy a house easier. But people of color were often discriminated from these practices, and they were not able to move into these new neighborhoods. In 1968, the Fair Housing Act, which was signed by President Johnson, was supposed to end the ability for people to discriminate on a person when moving into these neighborhoods based on their race. The Fair Housing Act didn't do this because white families were told that if even one or two families of color moved into their neighborhoods, the values of their homes would decrease. So because of that, these white families would move with their resources out of these neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods would stay segregated as they were before. It should also be noted that with the Federal Housing Administration, about $120 billion was given out in home mortgages. Less than 2% of this was given to families of color, while more than 98% was given to white households. In this graph, the main thing to focus on is the acres. So it was taken in 1999, and you can see that the amount of acres owned by white families is still at 98.1%. And for this, the rest is families of color or people of color. And you can see how the statistic is still effective through generations. In this graph, it shows the parent generation, which was taken from when they were around 41 years old, from 1967 to 1971, and their children when they were around 39 years old, from 1995 to 2002. Here, the bottom section, which they made a median income of $23,000. It shows that their children were expected to do 18% better than they did, and they got a median income of $27,000. If the graph increases at a pretty good rate, however, when you get to the top section, their median income for them was around $100,000. Their children were expected to do 52% better than they did and make around $150,000. And it shows how unproportionately the increase was for how much your children were expected to do better than you were. Education and the socioeconomic system. Education has a large effect on what you'll do in your future and the opportunities that are granted to you. Many opportunities to do better are given to a student or given to a person through their education. One of these could be gifted and talented programs. However, it's seen that the odds of a black student getting into a gifted and talented program is 66% less than that of a white student. It is also seen that for a Hispanic student, the odds of them getting into the program is 44% less than a white student. However, when there was a black student had a black teacher, it was seen that it was 3 times more likely for them to get into the gifted and talented programs. And that shows how much of an impact representation in schools has on students in general. In conclusion, I have a quote by Barack Obama. Now, as a nation, we don't promise equal outcomes, but we were founded on the idea everybody should have an equal opportunity to succeed. No matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, you can make it. That's an essential promise of America. Where you start should not determine where you end up. That quote definitely is very strong, and the best way to follow through with this is to increase the representation in schools by making the student body or the teachers at a school more representative of the student body. Like if there's more minority students in a school, have more teachers that represent that school body. Thank you.
So my name is Charles Ruff, and I will be talking about, I will be talking about wealth inequalities in Central America, specifically in Nicaragua. And so some things to note is that while I was in this camp, I also had the opportunity to actually travel to Nicaragua and learn about some different things. So these are the 3 things that I learned during the camp in my research. So DNR CAFTA stands for the Dominican Republic and Central America Free Trade Agreement, which is an extension of NAFTA. And so that's promoting free trade, economic stability, and that's it. And so what I also learned is that the U.S. contributes almost 60% of a lot of Central American countries' exports, but then their imports are only close to 19%. So they're taking in a lot of stuff from these countries, but they're not sending much back. The United States is also 28% of their private companies, so they take control of a lot of their, sorry, right now. So there's a college in Nicaragua, and it's a U.S.-owned college. There's also a lot of prisons that they control that are funded by the U.S. And so when I was there, I learned that not everyone in Nicaragua likes CAFTA because a lot of small-scale farmers are being taken advantage of because there are a lot of middlemen who come and give them this very low price that's not really, they're not able to live off of that. And so the daily worker in Nicaragua makes about 150 cordobas, which is $2 a day. And so with that, they can buy the lowest quality of rice and beans and vegetables for like a family of 6. Something else that I found was that the U.S. also gives them a lot of military, or back in the 70s, they gave them a lot of military aid. And that really messed up their economy because they trained these Contras, which were rebels, to raise crops and kill farmers to remove the government at that time. That still has lasting impacts because the land, they can't necessarily still use it because they messed it up. The U.S. is also promoting free trade instead of fair. And so what free trade is free trade is when the workers don't have the ability to create unions. Their labor their labor conditions are very poor. They're most commonly sweatshops, and there are free trade zones in Nicaragua because of CAFTA. And fair trade is when goods are priced by their quality and the time that it took for the people to make it, and then the materials. And then the best thing that I learned is that while there's a lot of poverty there, there's a lot of people who live in dumpster areas and just use recycled material. They have the mindset of rich people, and what that means to me personally is that they don't have a lot, but they will give a lot. There are a lot of small organizations that help with small farmers joining together so they can create co-ops and raise the prices of their crops. That was really it for me.
Okay, so during my time, during my time researching, I accounted for the differences in interracial violent crime between racial and ethnic groups in the United States. I found that the homicide rate in blacks and the violent crime rate overall was much higher than whites and Hispanics. This was especially true for homicide and robbery. So during my research, I sought to find out the exact cause for this disparity. And I pinpointed most of the cause to socioeconomic status. So essentially, structural differences like education, unemployment, and residential segregation and familial instability were associated with higher violent crime rates regardless of race. So here in the graph, you see that the homicide rates of blacks Okay, it's 10 per every 100,000 people. And right here, you can see that the white homicide rate is close to 1, and the Hispanic homicide rate is close to like 3.5. However, notice that scale change. Once you control for poverty and socioeconomic status, the homicide rate of blacks drops significantly. Here you can see that it's actually around 5 when you control for poverty. In Hispanics, it was reduced completely. So I also needed to find out what the remaining difference was caused by, and I found that it was mostly due to residential segregation. You can also see that the scale changed again. And so residential segregation is basically reflects the historical concentration of blacks in inner city areas. And once you eliminated that, then the homicide rate was roughly equal. And I also found that immigration and Hispanic was associated with less homicide rates. So basically, more immigration actually caused less crime in Hispanics. So that pretty much discounts the myth that they're sending rapists and murderers from that.
My topic was education, inequality, and how it plays into high incarceration rates in Black youth. My name is Thomas, I go to Hillside, and I chose, my research question was, what effect does education have on incarceration rates in Black youth? Some background on it is that there are high incarceration rates, and there's racial bias because of it in African Americans. And I feel like it's something we don't really talk about, but education plays into it, and it's kind of blatant. The U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics did census data on the amount of education an inmate had, their race, and their sentencing. So I found out that 47% of African Americans, of Black inmates, did not complete high school, and only yeah. And you can see here how only 1.1% of college graduates and of the Black inmate population made up the prisons. And the methodology that went into this was, I wanted to find data that reflected education incarceration rates and had to do with race too, because it plays a part in it. I'm passionate about education because it's something that affects all of us, and especially as an African American, it affects me, the school to prison pipeline, and we're at a higher chance of falling into it. And I concluded that the more education you have, the less likely you are to fall into a life of crime. I think the question I picked was a little too narrow, in that there are other factors that play into higher incarceration rates. If just focusing on education, I feel like this wasn't enough. I think a broader question would have resulted in a more in-depth and detailed analysis. There was a lack of current information because the census data was from 2003, and I tried looking for one like more recent, but the more recent we got, it didn't focus on what I was trying to focus on. And I plan to revise this question and gain more of an understanding as to why this happens and what we can do to stop it. And